Hello, loves. Welcome back to WitchyMarlaina's Ghost Adventures. I'm your host, WitchyMarlaina, and today I am so excited. Reason being is that this spooky object I touched, I saw, I took pictures. I'm so excited. Spookiest objects. Let's see. Today's object is the Mrytles Mirror. Let's get started. Last year, in the heat of July, Angie and I took a road trip for a late birthday party for me. I just turned 39. It was time for us to have a girls' trip and get out of town. I wanted to go to New Orleans. If you guys were hanging around with me last year, you know I was like, I wanted to go to Pirates Alley. I wanted to do the whole New Orleans thing. My mother wanted me to do something else. So she graciously gave me the funds to go to St. Francisville, Louisiana, where the Mrytles Plantation resides. And that's where this mirror resides too. So, I'm so excited. Let's get started. Let's go back. Now this plantation has been around for over 200 years, so there's a lot of history before we start talking about the mirror. So bear with me, okay? Because again, I'm super excited and there's a lot to talk about. We're going to go back to 1785. David Bradford marries Elizabeth Porter, and they're from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and they're just, the country was starting anew. Okay. David Bradford was general, and he waged war. He was part of the Whiskey Rebellion. They called him Whiskey Dave. So, hello. So he was a wanted man by George Washington. So what did he do? He went down south to hide out. He's moved his family, his wife and his 5 kids down to Pittsburgh, and then he left. He left to Louisiana. First, he wanted to find lots of land. He wanted to build a big house for his large family, and it's time. It was time to go. Well, later in 1796, President John Adams pardons Whiskey Dave Bradford, and he's like, all right, I'm not a wanted criminal anymore. Let's get my family down to Louisiana. Let's go back to my plantation, which he called Laurel Grove at the time. Okay? All of his kids died of yellow fever, except for one. Her name was Sarah, and David Bradford was he was a lawyer, and he had an apprentice underneath him named Clark Woodruff, and Clark fell in love with Sarah. So when David Bradford died, it was Sarah's mom, Elizabeth. She took over the plantation, but at her age, she wasn't it wasn't her deal anyway. So Clark decided to purchase the plantation from Elizabeth, and they all lived, Elizabeth included, still lived at Laurel Grove until Elizabeth passed away. And it was just, they started their family. Now, Clark and Sarah, they didn't treat their help very well. Nay. But we'll dive into that story here in just a little bit. Later on, after another spout of supposed yellow fever had taken Sarah and all of her children, Clark sold the plantation. He was done with it. His family was gone, and he sold it to Sterling. His last name was Sterling. And Sterling, he renovated it. It was time. It was like, let's grab all of this stuff and make it anew. Bring in all these fancy furniture from across the pond and let's make it even bigger. So he built everything up to the plantation that it is today. Like, it is huge. Now, Sterling, he was a little bit of a gambler. Poor thing. Yeah, he was. And hey, when you have debts, you got to do something, right? And so Sterling died 4 years after the renovations, and his family couldn't keep on with it. They really couldn't. And so after Sterling died, his wife, Mary, gave the property to another Sarah. Sarah and her husband, William Winter, were the next owners of Laurel Grove. Now, they're not Laurel Grove anymore because Sterling renamed it the Mrytles. So because now he renovated it, he changed the name. William Winter, again, was like a solicitor. He was a lot of lawyers graced the doors of the Mrytles Plantation. And he died in a very tragic way. The story goes like this. He was sitting in his front parlor. Front door's there. Normally the front parlor is for the gentlemen. It's normally where they would retire to have their drinks of brandy and play their card games. But he was sitting in there helping his son with his homework. He hears a man's voice on horseback, because he hears the horse, and this was in January of 1871. He hears, "William Winter, where is William Winter? Are you William Winter?" And he comes out. He's like, "I am William Winter." And he gets shot in the chest, and his body flies back into the house, and he lands close to one of his parlor chairs, his son being a witness to all of this. He goes and grabs Sarah, his mom, and she, sobbing because she tried to drag him back up to the steps to get him in bed. She couldn't do it, so she literally had him dying in her arms. And another haunted spot in the Mrytles Plantation is the staircase, and how they see a woman in white that normally kind of flows down, or a shadowy figure that looks very sad and ominous that just walks up and down the steps. Okay? After William Winter, there was a gap period. It really was, where there was just random owners, not anything too fancy or too tragic anyway, until 1950. Now, Marjorie Munson. That's her name. Marjorie Munson purchased the Mrytles Plantation in the 1950s, and in 1992, she had an insurance company take pictures to reappraise the plantation. Okay. This is one of the pictures that they took. It is one of their lovely postcards. But if you look in between, see that? Looks like a lady, doesn't it? They're saying that this is a slave girl named Chloe. And the crazy thing is that National Geographic authenticated this photo too. So this is not a fake or a fabricated photo. This is real. So yeah, there she is. Chloe. Let's go back to her. Clark and Sarah Woodruff had 3 children. When Sarah was pregnant with her third child, she was bedridden. And to get out of the fields, Chloe, beautiful, beautiful girl that she was, had an affair with Clark. Man's got his needs, don't he? So once his third son was born, he cut ties with Chloe. It's only fair. That's, it's done. His wife is now accessible again, But Chloe didn't want to go back in the fields. She wanted to stay an indoor house slave. It was a comfy job. So she begged to be the kids' nanny and was able to do it. She had a really good rapport with the children and they really loved her. So she was able to stay inside. But Chloe liked to eavesdrop a lot. She is a absorber of information, because if Clark wanted to throw her back out into the fields, she wanted information on him and blackmail him. Unfortunately, that gung-ho attitude got her in trouble. She was at the parlor door with her ear close to it, listening to all the menfolk talk about business and what they talked about back then, and was caught. Now, Clark had to do something to show that he punishes his slaves who don't do what they're supposed to do, and he cut off her ear. And she was banished to the kitchen. So after he cut off her ear, she wore these beautiful green turbans, and she always had one earring in. So the ear that was kind of showing still had an earring in. I think it was just, the pictures of her is absolutely gorgeous. She tried desperately to get back into Clark's good graces. And in her head, in the kitchen, it was one of the children's birthdays, and she was like, if the kids really are sick and Sarah's sick, maybe I will be able to come back into the big house, the main house, and take care of them while they're sick, and maybe that'll prove to Clark that I don't need to be in the kitchen anymore. So what does she do? She puts oleander flowers in the cake. Now, oleander flowers are very, very poisonous, and a little bit would have made them ill the way she wanted it, but she didn't put a little bit in there. She put a lot in there. She baked this birthday cake. She was the one who presented it to Sarah and the children, and not even 2 hours after they ate the cake, they died. This is a folklore from what they say, but the mirror is what we're going to get into. When Sarah and the children died, normally when there's death in the house, all of the mirrors get covered with a black cloth. The superstition is that if a mirror was seen while death was in the house, that the spirits of the dead will be trapped in the mirror. Okay? This mirror looks like this now. See those little fingerprints? And then, you see this one? Those look like drips down the mirror. It almost looks like it's drips down on the wall behind it on the staircase, but no, that is drips in the mirror, like almost like crying, or it just drips. When we were on our tour talking about this mirror, they talked about the fingerprints. There were little feet prints on there. There are scratches, and there's black spots. If you saw in those pictures, there's like little black spots. They have put new glass in it. They have refurbished it. They have cleaned it immensely, and these prints and those streaks stay. there's a good chance that you can see Sarah through that mirror too. Now, the other freaky stuff about the Myrtles is not just the mirror. Like I said, you can see a lady in white float up and down the staircase that's behind the mirror. There are footsteps, objects moving all the time, especially if they're not in the place that they're supposed to be. There were painters helping to get a restoration going. They would move the chairs out, they would cover them, get the paint going, come back in the next day to do the second coat, and all of the furniture was back where they were. The cloth they were under was on the floor. And it's like, wow, craziness, absolutely craziness. They say that the house was built on an Indian burial ground because they have seen a ghost figure of a Native American woman that loves to walk outside of the plantation. They have a room called the doll room, which I wasn't able to experience because someone was actually sleeping in the doll room. And guests bring toys to see if the children want to play. And per the staff, the one that they hated the most was a Tickle Me Elmo that would not shut the fuck up. They took the batteries out of it and everything, and that Tickle Me Elmo still talked. And it was just meh. Craziness. All right. There's also pictures of children in the window. Another one of their wonderful postcards, but if you can see, there's a little child in the window. This is on the second story where the doll room is. I'm sorry, you can't make this stuff up. You can't. And then the other cool stuff that I got from there was replica of old money. So this is Confederate currency. This is set B of Confederate currency and set C. So I guess it morphed during the Civil War. So there you go. And then last but not least, we went to the restaurant. It's called 1796. And the restaurant was the kitchen. And the kitchen did burn down. It was like one of those like freak accidents. So they rebuilt it, and they have these beautiful brick ovens that are absolutely amazing. And so this was on our reservation table. Happy birthday to me. And then this is another picture of Mrytles. And they said, thank you for celebrating your birthday with us. So I thought that was really cool. Food there was delicious. The staff, absolutely amazing. Honestly, I would love to be a tour guide in something like this. Just telling stories, freaking people out a little bit. I was touched at the Mrytles in the ladies' parlor. Something brushed the back of my leg when I was standing next to a chair that apparently is Chloe's chair and nobody needs to go near it. And I was brave enough to go near it, and I felt like a swish on my calf. And I was like, I know this is a little long, but I'm telling you, this place really, really excited me. But that's it. The Mrytles Mirror at the Mrytles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. OMG, I love this place. It was featured on Ghost Hunters. It was featured on Ghost Adventures. It was featured on, it was featured in a movie. Oh, I can't remember which movie it was, but it was the backdrop of a movie, and that the actors got freaked out about that too because stuff was moving around there too. So this place has been haunted for a hot minute, and I'm so glad that I was able to experience it firsthand. Thank you so much for joining me on my ghost adventures. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll talk to you later.